As usual, I always do an introduction for the videos that we record, since we post these videos on the YouTubes, so that people who are from Houston but they cannot make it because apparently there's traffic in this city. Traffic. Right? But also people from other states have been, catching up with the videos, and I've been running into people at the track, and they're always like, oh yeah, you're the guy from the videos, keep doing that, because we don't get that information anyplace else. And it's like, all right, as long as there's somebody either here for us to talk or someplace else watching, we'll keep doing this, right? Because a lot of people have been getting a lot of value out of these meetings. So, quick introductions, right? First, a big thanks to Improving, my employer. It's this company here who allows us to use the training room space here, the facility. They provide us food, provide us free parking, drinks, and all that. And it keeps us going, so that's awesome. Hard photography. Blair is the guy who takes pictures of us if we are doing Ride Smart days and some of the other orgs, and he gives us a nice discount. Whoever is a member of this group, he gives us a discount to purchase our awesome track photos. The BCT supporters on Patreon, some people who are just supporters on that site, where I'm also building a Beyond the Track website that consolidates a lot of the stuff that we discuss here. And you guys for showing up so that I'm not talking to the walls and recording myself. I could do that at home, right? But nah, I'd rather have the interaction, in-person interaction here going. I'm Claudio La Sala. I have a YouTube channel, 3 Lap Rider. That's where I post all of these videos. There is a Beyond the Track playlist where I upload all of these videos there, plus my own track footage. But tonight, so last week or last month, we were here, Bryce, we were here for almost 3 hours, right? Where I did like a whole run on my, preparation for race weekends in June. The wrenching gone wrong because I'm not a big, a mechanically savvy guy, so I'm just getting started on doing some of that, and some of what I did actually didn't work. And then of course I go to Friday practice for the race weekend. Things go wrong. It starts like messing with my head, but I have to find, my mojo so that I don't mess up my race weekend. I get that all sorted out, and then I go on Saturday. I do 1 race, all good. 2nd race, I'm down. Crap, not cool. Transported to the ER, not fun. So I talked extensively through all of that, and ever since. So after last month's meeting, that was like 3 weeks after my crash. I was just starting really the recovery process. I had not even done a physiotherapy session yet. Now about 4 to 5 weeks have gone by. I'm recovering. I'm not on a sling anymore. I can actually high five people, because I couldn't until like last week. People were going, oh, high five. I'm like, that's why I kept like using the sling, even though I didn't really have a need for it. But it's amazing how you're gonna go for it. You don't think. So I kept the sling just so that I wouldn't forget that. Because whenever I was in the house without the sling, I saw myself like, oh, there's something falling off whatever, a shelf. You go immediately. I asked the therapist, hey, look, if I go just take a walk around the block, how do you recommend? Keep the sling on. Because if you trip on something, you are gonna go with that hand, and you don't want that. Like, yeah, that's smart, right? So stuff like that, and of course, the recovery process, it has made me think about a lot of stuff, like the things that I missed because I crashed, the financial aspects, how does it play with your mind, when can I actually get back on the bike, which I did 2 weeks ago. I'm back home and I'm like, okay, I'm feeling okay. I feel like I can sit on a bike and I can ride down the street and back, just to work my mind back into it. It's like, dude, you're gonna be fine. Just go. So that's what I did. I pulled bikes out of the garage and then just rode around the block. It's like, okay, I can do that. And then last week I just started riding to work. Since I don't have to get on the freeway, it's just 2 main streets that I have to take here. It's a 5-mile ride. And also out of necessity, because my car is being shared with the family. So it's like, I need a bike to get to work, because Uber adds up, if you're having to do that every day. Riding the bike just fine. This morning I had an appointment with the doctor to just see how I'm doing. He saw the x-ray, I'm doing fine, I'm recovering fine. The therapy is working out well. He advanced me in the protocol to start not just working on getting my range of motion back, which he said now you're pretty much close to 100% of having your range of motion back. And I'm like, yes. So now you can start working on actually building strength back into the shoulder muscles. But then he said, and I said, okay, what else do I need to, what kind of care should I, have? Not to just ask directly, can I ride at the track again? That's why I wanted to ask, because he saw me with my helmet. He knew I was on the bike already. He said, yeah, the motorcycle thing, you don't want to have any kind of impact on that area just yet. As he said, even though you're doing fine and you're progressing really well, it's not fully healed. The bone has not fully mended. So you don't want to like go down again and hit that area, because then it's not going to be pretty, right? It's going to be even harder for you to recover from that. So I'm like, just because I was planning on hitting the go-kart track with my mini bike, to just get on it and get the body moving, But like, I better not take any chances, because if I waited until now, I can wait until next month. And I mean, the last maybe 24 months, I think this is the longest I've been not going to the track, because I've been going ever since January of last year. I think I've been going to the track at least once a month. Big addiction. So right now it's been like, I need to go out there again. But, just have to wait. Fortunately, I have other activities that get me going, right? And keep me busy. So for this month, I asked Brian, because Brian has had a crash last year, which he shared with us here with details, how things happened and everything, what caused the crash and things like that. And then he's been sharing how he recovered from it, or not specifically how he recovered, but getting back on the bike and starting racing, which was the dream, right, to actually aim for. So I asked him, if he could do something specifically about the recovery process, because that's something that I'm going through. I'm seeing how, I'm handling it, and then as he put together some notes, like the, replaying the crash in different ways in your mind, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I've been doing that. Like as I'm replaying, my crash in my mind, like I'm not thinking about, okay, let me think about it. It just comes to my mind, it's like, oh crap, yeah, that's how I crashed. And then what if it had happened this way or that way? Or what if I go back again and I do this thing at a different corner? What?
Yeah, you know what you should have done now by analyzing it over and over again.
Exactly. Right? And it's one of those, like, man, I've taken that corner over and over and over and over again. It has never been an issue. Even when I first got the bike with the GP shift, the first time out on the track with the bike with GP shift, that was my goal. Okay, just go slow and figure out the whole, it's going the different way that you want to actually go. So I did miss a couple of shifts that day, because it's like, nope, I'm going up, I should be going down. But I was focused on that. So whenever it happened, I was expecting something like that to happen. So I had the mental space to actually, I know exactly what went wrong. I'm gonna go wide a little bit here because I'm fixing stuff and I'm back on track. No big deal. But when it happened out of something I was not waiting for, I just didn't react well, right? And you live and learn. So if that ever happens again, maybe I'm gonna have internalized that, or maybe that's just some something I could practice. Like I could enter that corner and do exactly the same thing I did, like upshift instead of downshift. The bike's gonna go brrr. Keep on going. Commit to the corner. Keep looking. Follow the line.
Worry about the bike after.
Yeah, it's like, okay, it's vibrating different than you would expect. It sounds different, but focus on where you're going. Right? That was my mistake. It was like, oh, there's something wrong. Look down, and then instead of looking up here, I'm like, oh crap, that's exactly where I don't want to go. I need to go there. By the time I had this reaction, the front wheel was already touching the grass, and then immediately just go down. right? But that's that, man. Without further ado, Ryan, thank you very much, man, for signing up for this.
Yeah. Anything to help.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's me, Brian Cole. I am a CMRA racer now. I had the Problem Knob shirt on here. This was at Hallett. I've been riding my whole life pretty much. I started on dirt bikes, and that's one thing I was thinking. That's one of the reasons I haven't switched to MotoGP shift yet, because I've been riding since I was 13 or 12, and it's always been, you know, 1 down, 5 up. So
yeah. That's been my drill too.
because I'm so used to it, and then I started street riding at 19, and that's the reason I haven't changed it yet. But if it comes to a point where it inhibits me in some way, or if I'm going to race in Moto America or something, then yeah, obviously. But
right.
For now, it's good enough as it is. And oh yeah, also I've been riding with Ride Smart for about 3 years now, although I took a long break, a hiatus. Like the whole last year I took off, and then I've only ridden with them once this year. And then I've done, 3 race weekends now with CMRA. The first one I didn't, I've worked corner working with them several times, and the first one I just did the class and working. I didn't ride. Like in February when the MSRH came around, I still wasn't ready really to ride, because I was hurting just from, my foot was bothering me then still, it still bothers me now. And yeah, so I took it easy on Saturday and I worked on the Sunday. So I've only had 3 weekends all year, which is, there's only 2 left, so I'm not going to get a lot in. I might not make Hallett, so I might only do 4 this year, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Remind me how long between your crash and when you went back on the bike at the track?
It was July 21st was my accident at Crescent in the afternoon, and then it was February, what was that, 21st, somewhere around there, when
oh, so you did ride in February?
Yeah,
okay.
It was the end of February when the first race weekend was for MSRH, and
okay.
that Friday when we did the class together,
That's
that
right.
was the first time I'd been on the bike.
Yeah, that's right.
In
So that was
7
about
months.
7 months, okay?
Yeah, so,
That's right.
or is it 6 months? But,
about,
right around
about
there.
7, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
What was your injury, if you don't mind me asking?
My main injury was my foot. I broke in at least 4 places. I think there was more, because they were, the two of the hairline fractures that they saw were on the top, and then I think there were 2 more on the side and 2 on the inside, but they couldn't see them because it was only x-rayed, and they didn't do all the angles all the way around the foot. They only did a couple shots. So because now of where the bone growth is, how much it grew back around, it's quite a bit bigger than it was before. So like if you put my feet together and compare, you can definitely tell that the left is bigger because of the reparative bone growth was so immense. And so that was the main thing. I had to stay off it for 6 weeks. I also had a hand injury right here because I wasn't wearing full gauntlet gloves that come all the way down right here. It was just a little wrap, and so that it should have still held, but the glove split. The right one held together, but the left one split, and so it took a chunk like this right here and a little bit right there. And it's mostly healed up. Surprisingly, it's better than I thought it would be at this point. There's still a bit of a scar right there, but I'm actually really happy with how the hand healed. And then of course I had like a bruised knee, and it was still hurting like 6 weeks later. Also elbow, I still have a scar here, but it was pretty much swollen from here to here. And then when all the inflammation went, it had my whole arm bruised. Like from there you could see all the the blood that was held in. It was pretty intense. It was a long recovery, and it was probably my hardest yet of all the injuries, because I think I mentioned that last time that I had broken this hand in 4 places. And I actually thought this injury was going to be a lot worse than this one because I had 3 comminuted fractures. And that means when it goes all the way through. So on this hand here, there was like an S fracture on my thumb right here, and there's a little bit, you can feel the bone growth right there. And then one of my metatarsals, I broke in 2 places, like a T fractured all the way through. And then I had another, like a little crescent moon fracture in one of the other ones. And that was about 6 weeks. I had it casted. I'd take a part of the cast off at 6 weeks so I could wiggle my fingers again and start bending them and folding them and all that. And then I kept the rest of the cast on almost through 7 weeks, and then finally pulled it off and started, always move the injured thing with your other hand first, because you don't want to use the muscles that have been atrophied. If you try to use them, it'll hurt, or it'll kind of like lock them up. So I'd always, I move them with this hand first and then start wiggling with the actual muscles. Same thing I did with my foot. I rested it about 6 weeks. Like, I had the boot on it for almost 7. And then at 5 weeks, I tried putting a little pressure on it, but then I was like, no, that's a bad idea. So I kept on the crutches for all the way through a little over 6 weeks. And then I kept the boot on for another week. After that, that's the big thing. It goes all the way up to your knee pretty much and straps all the way around, so you have some support there. And then when I took that off, and like I said, I got it and kind of bent my toes with my hands and started twisting my foot gently to just try to get some motion in there, massage it, work the muscles with your thumbs, get any inflammation or just get the muscle working a little bit at that point. One thing that I wish I would have done more is working it with certain exercises, like pretend this is your foot, doing like toe curls on the carpet, or like get a towel or something like that, and try to pick it up with your feet, and it'll strengthen the muscles. And then also doing like lifting the toes up like that to kind of flex these muscles up. I was doing that a little bit, but up until recently, I wasn't doing like specific sets. Like when you go to the gym and work out, you'll do 3 sets of so many reps. So because I've still been having a problem with it, and inflammation and things like that, over a year later, I started doing these exercises daily and doing those specific sets and reps, and it's actually helped a bit. It's strengthening it, it's dropped the inflammation back down, so you can start to see the definition of the bones and the veins in there, which it hasn't been, this whole time. It's been kind of swollen. So, and then also I did yoga. I still had to be very careful about certain poses. Can put a lot of weight on it. And then going back to the gym, the same thing. Like when I started squats, I just started with the bar. Well, actually I did a set of 10 with just my body weight, and then start with the bar, and then maybe 10 pounds on, 25 pounds, keep working up. And still to this day, I still haven't squatted over 135 pounds. I mean, that's the most that I put on, because when I start doing sets of that, I notice it, starting to wear on it a bit. So it's still been a constant recovery thing. And maybe if I had gone, because I had so much luck with the hand, I did the hand all by myself. I was just like, I'll rehab the foot myself as well. And maybe in this case, I should have talked to a rehab specialist, because they might have known certain things that I could have done to get it back faster. Now, a year later, if I would have been doing certain exercises, it probably would be better now. And then of course, putting weight on it, you start with low weight, don't carry any heavy objects, don't go running, don't, even, climbing a lot of stairs or something like that would be. So you just have to gradually over months work your way back up. And I hope yours goes a lot better than mine did, Claudio. I hope within 3 months you're good and you're strong as you were. Because Feet are also harder though. I have a good buddy that is a RN, and he's done a lot of surgical tech stuff. You know, he helps out with surgeries and things like that. And he was like, the foot is the hardest thing, one of the hardest things to heal, because you can't not use it like your hand. You know, you have to walk around. You know, go to the bathroom, go to work, things like that. When it's a hand, you can be careful with it and not use it as much, and only carry lighter things. But with your foot, it's how much you weigh. And then of course, I gained weight because I was like 185 in great shape before my accident, and then after that, it's like I'm not eating as healthy. I'm not, I don't have the time and energy to cook and the ability to sit there and stand, cook something healthy for 30 minutes or whatever it is. So I was eating like crap, and I put on, 20, 30 pounds, something like that. And I just had to slowly work that off as well. And that's of course putting more weight on your foot, your knees, whatever. So, and this is the funny thing. Before, I still had my boot on when I started working on the bike. I got it. I had it in the garage, and of course, I couldn't do very much. I was stuck in bed most of the time, or resting, doing whatever. And so I would go out on the bike and tinker a little bit, take the tire off or whatever it was. I started taking apart the little, like the levers and stuff, because of course, that's the first thing that breaks is the brake lever, foot peg, lever guards, things like that. So I did little easy 2-bolt stuff that was, it wouldn't take me much time. But eventually you're going to want to go through and check all the bolts and the parts of the bike. First, obviously, you look at the suspension and the frame and say, okay, it doesn't look bent. I can tell that it's still pretty much just like it was. So that was the first thing I looked at. I didn't know that you should, Jason actually told me this, that you should loosen all the triple tree bolts. I actually had to take my triple clamp off because my handlebar was bad, so in order to get the handlebar off. And when I did take that off, I noticed that the struts didn't try to move or anything. The forks, I always say struts. But the triple clamp went back on easily, so that's one way you can tell if the top of the forks or if the forks are bent somewhere, if it won't go on easily like it came off. Also the bottom, take off the front tire, and you can see if anything tries to move. The engine bolts, Jason was telling me it's good to loosen those in case something gets twisted or torqued and there's some kind of pressure buildup somewhere that would cause something to break down the road. You want to just loosen them up in case anything needs to shift or something, and then just screw them back into their proper torques. And like I said, fix all obvious broken pieces. I had to replace the master cylinder, which that's, like you were talking about, one of the first things that breaks, because on a stock bike it's all plastic. You have the actual master cylinder, which is metal, but then you have the plastic reservoir on the top, and you have all these little plastic pieces that go into that little hose there. So of course something of that's going to break. The weakest link in the chain. So I got a solid aluminum box with the 2 bolt-down screws on the top, and racing brake levers, lever guards, and then of course had to order race bearings, which I found a place in Italy which was pretty cheap. I think I discussed this last time. It was like $600 for race bearings, and then I had to get them painted. One thing I didn't do, I did kind of check my radiator, and I noticed that there was some damage, but it looked okay, and it was holding water. And I was like, okay, it must be fine. So I took it to the track that day in February, and I started having a little bit of leak. It had bent the top of the actual radiator, the lip where the cap goes on, so it bent the cap and the lip underneath. And of course, once it gets up to 200 degrees and the pressure builds, and it started coming out. And I just did a quick fix. I found some I had some JB Weld, or no, it was like Ultimate Gasket Sealant, something like that, that would dry pretty quick. I just put it on there and it got me through the end of the day. And finally, yeah, it was only about $1,000, including the fairings for me to fit. Part of the parts, some of the parts, excuse me, I did get used. So I had found a handlebar online, and of course I get the Chinese pegs, and I believe the lever guards were Chinese and things like that. Because a lot of the stuff is really hard to find for my bike, or it's going to be super expensive if you get the top of the line race stuff. So
Okay.
I did what I could to get it together at a safe.
So you reference handlebars. Does yours have you don't have clip-ons on your bike?
No, it was the stock handlebars, and I actually prefer them because it screws into the triple clamp.
Yeah.
There's a bolt that goes through the triple clamp and into the handlebar, so it gives
The
you,
anti-vibration bushings.
yeah, it's I think it's more secure than the others, but then it's more likely to break the bar than like on Claudio. He had the little the screw-ons, and it just kind of moved the bar, knocked it loose, and I'm guessing it was still good because when I
Oh,
looked
it's
at
still
it,
good, yeah.
it was fine. So I guess that is the downside of that. Also, that if you try to get one from the dealer, it's $180 for one handlebar. And I think that has something to do with them not making them anymore. It's special order. They might have to special make the part, or I don't know. But
I was gonna ask you, like doing the work, the repairs on this bike, do you think that also helped you mentally during your recovery process? Like becoming more, I mean, you're familiar with the bike, but
Oh, yeah.
I don't know, just, you know what I mean? That interaction with it, I guess.
yeah, it's
Or was it more
In
like,
the way
dang, I
that
gotta
it's-
fix
it's
this
like
bike,
a-
you know what I mean?
a hobby. Well, yeah, initially it was like, man, I messed her up, and I wanted to know like how
Yeah.
bad it was going to be, because I didn't
Yeah.
know at first if the frame or the forks were bent until I started tearing it apart. And just I've always like used like working on things, doing the lawn. It's kind of like a meditation hobby. While you're doing it, you're peaceful, and you're
Yep.
sometimes you're thinking about what's going on in life or whatever, but sometimes you're just in the moment and you're able to relax. But yeah, in that way, it was good for me because it was something to kind of put my mind on, and like, I'm going to put it back together and get back out there, and it's going to be
Right.
better than before and all that, So, and that definitely helps once you fix it too. You don't go outside in your garage every time and see your busted up bike, and you're reminded you have at that point, I still have my boot on when I first started working on it. And yeah, it helped, I guess. And then once, you get everything together and it starts looking all pretty again, and you're like, yeah. And if I were you, Claudio, I would use this time to paint your bike.
Oh, yeah.
I highly suggest my friend Kelly. He could do a great job
Yeah.
on it.
It's just the money, man. It's some money to have the.
Yeah, it's a good. I did talk to him again. I don't know if I told you this. He said he would do it for $800, about $200 a
Okay.
piece. If you have 4 pieces for your bike. But it is nice to get out there with a brand new bike,
Yeah.
or brand new looking bike.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, the hardest thing is probably the mental aspect of it. As hard as the physical aspect was and is, the mental can really mess with you. Mine, I won't go into this fully, but my accident, when I first had it, I was still really optimistic about, I can get over this real quick. I'll be, in a few months, I'll be walking again great. I'll be able to get back on the bike, and I can do some races this year before the end of the season, and all this. And I was looking forward to, working out again and getting back in shape and all that, and getting on the bike. And it just, as time progressed, and it wasn't coming back as quickly as I thought it was going to, and it was getting harder and harder instead of easier and easier. And that's when most of the pain came too. For you, hopefully, all your pain is done with just the collarbone break. But for me with the foot, because it was in the boot and wasn't being moved, I was laying in bed with it up on pillows, it wasn't hurting for that first 6 weeks that I wasn't using it at all. Then I take off the boot and I start moving it around, I start using it a little bit, and at first it wasn't bad, the first week or two, but then once I started intensifying it got worse and worse, and the pain would get bad sometimes, and then so I would ease back and focus on more gentle things, or just moving it around and massaging it. And then even recently I've had trouble with it. I didn't even race for 3 months. I didn't go since Hallett. I didn't do the June one when he went down, and I didn't go to Crescent last month and race either, because I needed to take a break again, and money is kind of an issue. It's always can be an issue with racing, but having to deal with it, still hurting a year later when I'm pushing it too hard. I was getting, most of the time it's just a dull ache, but sometimes I was getting intense sharp pains, and I was like, geez, it's been so long, why is it still happening? And so that affects your mentality. It's not just a physical thing again at that point. So yeah, I waited again and just took it easy and started working on it again in different ways. Like I said, I've been doing those new exercises to strengthen the muscles around the bone. That way the bone is not having to do so much work itself, or getting so much pressure on it. And I'm sure any racer can tell you this. I've heard this on watching other IRL or NASCAR or whatever. One of the hardest things to do in the world is to come back to racing after a serious injury. Like you were saying about soccer, and I was talking about this with Dave, and I think I mentioned this at the last one as well, but we'll talk about it in a different way. You can get hurt in soccer and tennis. You can blow out a knee, you can break a collarbone, you can step off the freaking curb and twist and break an ankle. I know people that have done that.
Yeah, Vanessa didn't break, but it
messed it up good, where she was hurting for a month or
and
even
it's
longer.
still hurting. Depending on how she steps on things, she complains that
Yeah, tendon or ligament damage can take 6 weeks or even more to heal, and could be something that lasts. Just like mine. I mean, I hope that this isn't a lasting injury that goes forever, but although you could do these certain injuries, it's not likely that in tennis or soccer or something else that you could die. In racing or even track days, you can. And it's not a very high percentage, but we do put our lives on the line. There have been, 2 deaths at Crescent, and then I don't think there's any at Coda, and I'm sure there were some at Texas World Speedway, because it was open for 50 years or 60. But I mean, that usually has to do with a head or neck injury, but it still happens. More likely are the hand injuries, the wrist, the collarbone, right, as you have it happen to you. But you just have to be careful and realize that if you love it, then it's not sad to die doing what you love. And that's one thing that I had to deal with before getting on the bike, going back in February. I was like, do I still want to race? Do I still love this more than anything in the world? Would I die for it? And the answer to both questions was yes. So I was like, yeah, I'm going back out there. And I did, and I had a great weekend. Even though I didn't get to race, it was still fun. I got to ride, and then I, got to help out with the corner working. A lot of people, I think somebody went down. Actually, one of the guys that I helped had a broken collarbone. He high-sided right before you, the sweeper, before the kink, before the straightaway, because it was wet at that point, and
I remember.
It slipped out, and he kind of went down like I did. Like, it started to go like he was going to low side, and then it snapped back, and then he just went flying, and the bike tumbled in the grass as he did. Probably came right down on his shoulder. And you never know what's going to happen. You just hope for the best, prepare for the worst, wear all your safety equipment, give yourself the best fighting chance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, but for me, same thing. I mean, after the crash, a lot of people were like, "Oh, what happened? I crashed. Oh, I'm sorry." I'm like, "Don't be sorry. I was having a blast."
Yeah, up until it went wrong, everything was great.
Yeah, it's like
that's
I was,
how it goes. It's
I
great.
love doing that. I was having a blast. Don't be sorry. You should be sorry if I like slip in the bathroom doing something. Like you're.
Yeah.
That would suck.
Yeah, at least you have a cool story, you know. when
Exactly.
Somebody asks you what you did,
Yeah,
you
that
don't
was
say, "Oh, I
something.
fell in the bathtub," or "Oh, I stepped off a curb and broke my ankle," or you know.
Exactly.
Oh, you were, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh, that's badass. Yes, I know. That's why we do it.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For sure. And yeah, I wouldn't have it any other way. It's rough sometimes, but it's great.
Sweet.
You should always go after your dreams, do what you love. And yeah, like he was saying earlier, it was my dream to get the racing license, and I had to. Another part of the crash, the mentality, I had to put that on hold. I had to wait, be patient, and just, you know, wait till the time's right. That's one of the things I talked about last time. It's more important that you have, you know, all the money to get all the stuff that your bike needs, like proper tires, which is why I went down, or our friend Obuddy, he went down recently because he didn't have proper tires on.
Yeah.
And that you're healthy physically. You know, if you don't feel great, don't get on the bike. That's one thing I dealt with the last few months. We're not professionals, you know. If I ever get to that point, maybe I'll worry about that. But at this level, you know, safety is most important. Finishing the race is most important. So if you have to go slow or not race or whatever it is,
Yeah.
do what's most important for you. And yeah, the visions of, well, first it was, like you said, the visions of the actual crash that happened. Me remembering that the first night in the hospital, I relived it basically, and I woke up and I was like, oh shit, I'm in the hospital, and I was like,
Yeah.
it was like right as everything went wrong in my dream, you know, as the crash, my heart started pumping, and I jumped up and I was like, oh man, that was freaky. So I sat there a minute and I had to, you know, calm myself back down. And you will replay it over in your head and see, like we were talking about earlier, what could I have done differently? Why did it go wrong? How can I make sure this never happens again? You know? But when I went out to go race again at New Orleans, I was getting visions of crashing in new ways, like ways that I haven't crashed before, and that's what was messing with you. How do you know, what if it happens again? Oh my God, I could wreck and break my arm or whatever.
So you're saying while you were riding?
This
is what
was
you were
before the
visualizing?
races
Oh,
in New
okay.
Orleans. So like I said, I did the class in February and got the registration taken care of and everything, and then in March we went to New Orleans and raced, and you know, even on practice day, it was kind of messing with me because I hadn't been to that track before, and you know, I was still getting over this thing. So I guess kind of, you know, fear or whatever it is that tries to mess with you. Just, you know, thinking about all the things that could go wrong while you're out there. Because we've all seen, if we've watched racing, you know, you've seen people crash in 100 different ways. And that's kind of what was going through my head, like, oh, this could happen or that could happen or whatever. And I just had to be like, okay, forget about all that. You have to just, you know, focus and be in the moment. So breathe deep, and this works in any section of your life. Just stop, breathe deep in through your nose. If your heart's going, breathe out slowly through your mouth. And, you know, just center yourself. Just be in the moment and don't worry about hypotheticals, basically.
Yeah.
Just do the best you can with every second that you're out there. And that's one thing about racing, is that once you actually get out there, you are in the moment. You know, you can't think about anything else. You gotta
No time for
be
that.
100%. Am I on the line? What, you know, my throttle, my gear, my brake? Where is there any other riders around me? What's going on? So you're 100% in the moment. You're not thinking about, oh, what do I got to do tomorrow, or oh, what if I crash, or oh, what happened, you know, a month ago, 10 years ago, anything. It's just laser focus, and that's how you should be out there. You have to, and if you start trailing off into anything else, you're like, okay, stop and go back, focus 100% on what you're doing. And yeah, like I said, you just have to go out there and do it, but be easy. Don't think you're going to go out there and be just as fast as you were 6 months ago. You hadn't even been on the bike.
Right.
Just get comfortable. That's the most important thing. Get the feel, get on the line, and then work on getting speed back after that.
Right.
That's the least important part of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can have some messed up ass dreams after crashes too.
Yeah, especially if it's something that was serious, if it was an intense crash, or if, bad enough to put you in the hospital, whether it just be an hour or a couple days, like, I had to stay.
Exactly.
Some of this I already talked about, but still dealing with physical problems. Certain injuries will heal faster than others. My foot has still been inflamed and sore. Most of the time it doesn't bother me, but like I said, sometimes I'll get aches or intense pains if I push it too much. So I'm very careful about how much weight I put on it.
How long ago did you crash again?
It's been just over a year, about a year and a month, 13 months.
And the things, let me say, if you push too hard, it hurts and everything. How much of that happens when you're riding? Like when you're riding, how does it affect you?
Very rarely. I noticed one time, a lot of times because I load my bike myself and unload it, well, at the track, I'll have a guy help me or whatever, but that puts a little strain on it. And then if I get out there and I'm on the track all day, luckily I don't do a whole lot of shifting because of the R1. I almost never go down into first, and then I'll only go into third on the back straightaway, and maybe right before the launch. But I did notice I guess it was March 30th when we went with Ride Smart.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end of the day, and I went to shift, and I felt a pretty hard pain in there. I was like, oh, whoa. But then I just, I had to push it out and focus on what I was doing.
So it was not something that was like
going
building
fast.
up. You started feeling it just hurt at one time.
Yeah, I mean, every once in a while it'll do that. Whether I'm just walking barefooted or something like that, I don't know if I step on it wrong, or if, even with shifting, if just putting it in a certain position or flexing a muscle in a certain way, that'll set it off.
Yeah.
It has happened a couple of more times out while I was riding, but it's usually just random.
Okay.
Which is good. Another thing, this hand, I had ghost pains even after it was all better and it was strong. I could be working out or doing something, and I would just feel pains in it randomly where the brakes were, and it was kind of weird. But really, if you talk to a doctor, they'll say a bone, although it is mostly healed within 6 weeks, 12 weeks, whatever it is, it could be a whole year before it is fully restored and back to or stronger than its original health.
Okay.
With regards to gear, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
You mentioned about your foot. How did that work with your boots? Like, did you have to go up a size? Did you have to? I mean, this is what kind of stuff I'm thinking. Like, you have one that's regular, and then you have one that's larger. So
Yeah,
like,
no.
what do you do?
Luckily, the inflammation had gone down mostly by that point, and especially on the boots, they're bigger. Like when I started wearing shoes again, just 7 weeks or so after the accident, I definitely noticed that the shoes weren't fitting as well. I would have to open the laces up a lot more, and then tie the bows real small because the actual foot was so much bigger. But it's gradually gone down over time, and even though it is a little bigger in size, it's it's aesthetically where I can work with it. It looks like a normal foot again, except when it gets a little swollen. But
You don't look like a hobbit or something.
yeah, well, when I'm doing yoga and I put them together in certain poses, you can definitely see there's 40% bigger on the left
wow.
side. I mean, It's quite noticeable. I could pull off my shoes and show you. Real quick. It's that knuckle right by the
The big toe?
yeah, the big
In
toe,
middle?
the proximal metatarsal. It's like that, whereas on the other side of my foot, it's like that. So
Oh.
when I put them together, it's quite big, and that's why I think that there was many more breaks than they actually saw in the X-ray, because like I said, 2 of them were very tiny and they're barely visible to the eye, but there could have been several more, 4 more around the sides of it that they didn't see.
Okay.
And yeah, there was limited movement for a long time. I still can't get in certain positions, like sitting down on your toes, going down on your knees like
Yeah.
this, and I mean I can squat relatively, but I can't put too much pressure on that joint, all my pressure. And down again, and this kind of goes back to what I said about the visions of crashing and stuff, and I talked to other racers about this, and they're like, yeah, you can't worry about that, it's gonna happen again. And everybody says once they have a crash, oh, I'm never gonna crash again, but
Next thing
it's
you
gonna
know.
happen. So get over it, and hopefully it'll be real gentle like mine at Hallett when I went off into some wet grass. Luckily I got the bike slowed down enough to where I was just barely moving, and when I got both tires on the grass, it just laid down relatively easy, and we separated, and there was no pain or injury. Not even really much damage to the bike. I guess it cracked the fairings in a couple spots. But yeah, I had to pick it up and rinse it off, and this was actually before the races, and had to get back out there, go through the whole thing, breathing. I do a little meditation and center myself, relax my mind, get all these thoughts out of my head, and just go out there and stay focused.
You didn't end up in the turtle pond?
No, I was on turn 6,
Oh,
the
okay.
outside of turn 6.
Was it the first lap out?
No, that was actually the second practice round on Sunday morning. So I had done 3 sessions on Friday, and then I had already done a morning session on Sunday. And the track was still green. I mean, it was mostly dry, but sometimes, they sweat a little, or they don't have the full traction. And then of course all the grass around it is wet, so
Your moisture.
yeah, wind, that's another thing I was gonna say. If it's on like a day where it's been raining off and on, like on Claudio's day, you might want to be a little extra careful not to go off track, because
Yeah.
the likelihood of you going down if you go off is about 100%.
Yeah.
And unless you got medium, intermediate, or rain tires on, you're not going to get any traction, and even with those, you get minimal, because wet grass is just like.
Yeah, wet grass is like your holiday on ice. It's like,
And that is what happened, but there was clay, so there was a little bit of give. The ground was soft, when I was at Hallett. So, like I said, it was real gentle, didn't damage. It messed with my head a little bit, so when I went back out, my personal best was a 135, which is about 20 seconds off record pace, but it was still reasonably quick. I mean, I could have pushed a little harder, but there was no point. Risk versus reward. You don't have to, there's no chance I was going to win the Superbike Novice A anyway, so I'm not even going to try.
yeah.
And even on the Pravnov, I was going quick, but definitely not past my comfort level, and even just a little behind. Like I could have pushed a little longer on the throttle and broke a little bit later, but it was like, what's the
What
point?
for?
Yeah, I'm just trying to get through and get my license at that point.
Yeah.
And then 2 weeks later, I went down again at MSRH, and this was not a stupid mistake like last time, other than I was just getting faster, and I went too fast through the launch. I've always wondered why people were going down right after the launch, and that was always because I was a little bit tentative about it. I think the first day I was at a Ride Smart track day there was a few people that went off because they came too fast into the launch, so they went off track into the grass and went down.
Okay.
And plus, it's kind of blind, you know, you come over that hill and then you're turning instantly in. So I've always had a lot of respect for it. And not that I don't now, but I was getting faster and faster. As like I told Claudio, I didn't clock, but I think I was in like the high 142s. I'd definitely done confirmed low 145 or 145 flat there. And I was going faster than I'd ever been. And I noticed I started getting to the point where when I come out of the launch and do the cutback left, that I was pushing all the way out to the king stripes, to the edge, the paint, you know, the edge of the track. And yeah, for some reason I gave it too much coming around. I was going faster than I've ever been through there, than I've ever seen anybody going through there. It was, you know, I came third gear, I let off to go over the hill, and I can't even remember. I think I did downshift right before the hill, but, you know, I still could have been going 100 or very close to that.
Second, you think, before?
Yeah, because I'm getting up to about 130 there, I think, because I put it in third and I'm going, and then I let off, and usually downshift. Like I said, I can't remember 100% if I downshifted right there, but I think I did. But I still, like I said, could have been going around 100 before the hill, you know. And when you roll off the throttle at those high RPMs, like I said, there's a lot of engine braking. So
Yeah.
I was definitely decelerating as I didn't give it little or much brake. Came over, made the turn, no problem. Like, you'd be amazed how fast you can go through there and make it. But as soon as I went through it, I lifted it right over and went to lean, and I realized I was too fast. So I stood it back up, I went hard on the brakes, and I just went off, just barely off the edge of the track. But right there's like a mud spot, like right before the candy stripes. You know, you have the white stripe and you have the candy stripes, and then there's the grass. Well, that was mud right there. So I hit that. As soon as I did, it kicked the rear tire out, same as a Hallett.
So
And
you did go.
well, it
left
started to
and-
go left, and then it caught and it snapped back, and
Okay.
it slid around, and I went down, hit my ribs and my shoulder, and luckily I had enough momentum to where it rolled me over. I went all the way up on my head and landed back on the other side. But I think that saved me. Had I just slammed down and stopped right there, it might have broken my collarbone, just like it had on you.
Yeah.
So, once again, the longer the crash takes is better, because you don't want any sudden stops. That's when the bones really break. So I didn't even feel anything at that point. I hopped right back up and tried to lift my bike up, but I was having trouble. It took me several tries, and then once I finally did, I noticed that I had, you know, like the foot peg was broke, the rear brake, broke the front brake, and then I noticed later that the rear set on that right side was broken as well. So I couldn't have got back out there even if I had wanted to. And I didn't realize till later that I had actually got a bit of a concussion. And I noticed I had a small crack in my rib. Like, it was hurting a little bit for a few days, so I took it real easy, and it went away. And then a few days after that, I started moving around again, and I noticed, I was like, oh wow, it did crack a rib. So then I had to wait about a month for that to heal fully. And
Do you wear back protector?
I got a back protector since then, and I actually wore it at Crescent. I don't think it would have helped though, because of how I landed. You know, my back protector just comes to right here. If I had hit it right here, I think it still would have done the same damage.
Okay.
But had I had an airbag suit or something, it might have went off and really safe, because it comes around your ribs too, right? Doesn't it go all the way?
Not mine.
Oh, it
Mine
doesn't?
is mostly up here.
Oh, it's just mostly shoulders and collarbone?
Yeah, because the ones that come down here, those are even more expensive.
Oh, okay. And
Those are
like the one that
pricey.
Jason has, that full one that you wear over, that
That
probably
one is
goes
better
all
for
the
that.
way down, right?
Yeah, it does.
So yeah, like I said, I was at Crescent. I didn't make it for practice on Friday, which really would have helped me. I think it would have got me a lot more comfortable for Sunday. But I got there Saturday night and set up, and I didn't get my bike unloaded, unfortunately. But did that in the morning. Went and registered for my last 2 races. Of course, I did a Superbike Novice again and Prob Nov. Got 1 practice session in, and that really made me want some tire warmers. This was the first time that I went out, and my back tire was really sliding, I guess, because I hadn't been on it in 3 months, and it was really cool at that point. It was at its coolest point, you know, because it was early in the morning, and I got out there that first lap. I was still going slow, but I would notice when I started to lean that it was sliding a little bit here and there, and I was like, oh man, is something wrong? What's going on? So I just pulled around through the pit and checked everything real quick, and seemed fine. So I went back out, and I noticed that second lap there was more grip. It was feeling good, so I stayed out there and got a few good practice laps in. And then Superbike Novice, I started near the back. I think it was 4th row on the right. There wasn't too many people out there. I think, you know, all those rows were full, and then there was maybe 1.5 rows behind me, maybe 3 people or so. And when we launched, they pretty much, one of them went flying by me. I wanted to do a quick launch. I didn't, you know, try to do a hard launch. I didn't wait any time to let them go. I just did a moderate launch and tucked in behind everybody. And then I think 1 or 2 more people got around me as we were riding. I just kept it smooth, did about 135 lap times, took it real easy.
Oh wow, that was really easy.
Yeah, I was dead last, and I even got lapped by 4 or 5 people, I don't remember, but...
You were like in the high 20s at some point, weren't you?
No, I was running low 125s.
Low? Oh wow.
Yeah, so I was on track to be for race day last year, you know, before my accident, in the 123s probably.
Nice. Yeah, I remember you were around there.
Yeah, I didn't bother at all. I was there, there's nothing to win except for my race license. I was out there to finish the race. That was the goal. You know, it's a goal that I wanted a long time ago and I had to put off. So I just focused on the goal at hand and made it through that first race. Like I said, I got lapped, so I didn't have to do as many laps. I was hot and I was like, that's fine with me, whatever. I pulled off.
Nice.
Went and cooled off as much as I can. And then the second race was after lunch, so that's when the heat was really messing with me. I just had a little meal for lunch. You know, you don't want to eat too much because you get logy. So if you're going to eat something small, and always be drinking water all day on a hot day like that. Like they say at Ride Smart, if you're getting thirsty, if you're feeling dehydrated or at all, it's already too late. You waited too long, and it's going to be hard to come back from that. So, you know, drink 8-10 pints of water that day. If you're going to be out there all day, you should be drinking a lot.
Well, at least a couple of days prior to it, you should already be drinking.
Yeah, it's always a good idea to stay hydrated, but especially before track days.
Yeah.
And
that weekend was counterclockwise?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, this was the same direction. Yeah, the previous weekend that I had missed that I really wanted to go because it's almost like a new track. Was that?
Previous month, you mean?
Yeah, sorry. The previous race weekend.
Right.
It was in July, the previous month, and they were running clockwise that time, and I hear it's like a whole new track, and that's something, that's kind of the reason, you know, why New Orleans and Hallett were such a big deal and fun for me, because it was a totally new experience, you know, somewhere I hadn't been before, and it's always fun to learn a new track.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was counterclockwise the way that I had my accident on, and this was the first time that I had been out there since then, you know, in a year, and it was the first time I'd ridden in 3 months. So in the Promenade race, there was only 4 of us. I think there were supposed to be like 6 or 7 of us, and that one, you know, I was trying to get ready. I hate how they do it at lunch, like it's so relaxed, and then when they get to that point, they're like, okay, first call. And then a few minutes later, they're like, okay, second call, and then third call. And I was like, I didn't have my gloves on yet, so I had to put my helmet on, and they had already called third call, and luckily, like everybody was kind of running slow at that point, so I made it up there on time, and we waited a minute, but only 4 of us showed. There was 2 heavyweight bikes and 2 lightweight bikes, and
Okay.
I started up front. The guy next to me, he got a good launch. We were pretty dead even, and he held on the throttle a little bit longer through, and I let off, and so he just went right in front of me, and I was like, sure, go.
Yep.
And I just, focused on my lines, tried to be quick and smooth. Like I think it's Ty Howard. Like he's so fast, but he doesn't do any kind of jerky movements. It doesn't look like he's pushing anything. I mean,
It's like on
just,
rails. It's ridiculous.
yeah, it's quick and smooth. I mean, really fast and smooth.
Yeah.
It's just, that's what, inspires you. Most people should. That's what I do. And so the first couple laps, I'm going, and I hear this young kid, Caleb, I think he was on a 390 or something, 400. And he was back behind me for a couple laps, maybe trying to figure out, because I was definitely faster than him on the straights, but then on the turns, obviously he's way faster. And he got around me, and then we went into a straight, and I noticed I could have got right back around him, but then I knew, we'd be back in the turns, and he'd come back around me, so I let him go, and he started pulling away, and then I started speeding up and kind of reeling him in. But then back to, I was like, what's the point? I'm not going to win the race, and even if I was going to, what is it, a $75 gift certificate, which is something I want to do, go ride with Jim Duggar at ECR. But risk versus reward, what's the point? So I just focused on what I was there to do, stay upright and finish my races, get my license. So I finished 3rd place. I think my fastest lap was a 1:34.6 in that race.
There you go.
And by the end of that one, I was like, okay, yeah, let's get this over with. I'm hot, and I started cramping up because I hadn't been on the bike in 3 months. And they changed it. They moved the start line, I think, to save some time. So whenever you finish the race, you make that turn, big bend, and then you get right off the track. You don't have to do that full cool down lap all the way around. It's just you hit the checkered flag, and then you're right off.
Okay.
So I think they did that to get a few extra minutes, because a lot of times they have time issues.
Yeah.
And that was fine with me. I liked it.
Okay.
And yeah, I guess that's about it.
Nice.
I'm supposed to get my hard license in the mail.
Yay.
Proud of you,
shortly.
man.
Yeah.
All right. Nice. Very nice. Very
So,
nice.
thanks for coming out.
Yes, thank you very much. Good stuff, man. Appreciate it.